Happy 35th anniversary, The Legend of Zelda. I am the biggest Zelda fan and I love this franchise. And I got to sit down with the amazing Arekkz from Arekkz Gaming and we just nerd out and discuss what is the best Legend of Zelda game ever. So as I said, I am getting to sit down with an incredible guy. Now, this guy is the face of Arekkz Gaming. Not just the face, but the beard as well. And you know what, right? I am like the biggest Legend of Zelda fan I know on God's earth. But he might challenge me a bit when it comes to the love of this franchise. Arekkz, how are you doing today?
I'm good, man. I'm good. Good. Thank you for getting me on. I've been looking forward to this because I don't often get to just nerd out and just chat about Zelda. It'll normally be condensed to some kind of news topic, but just getting to sit down and just talk about Zelda. Yo, I'm ready.
Yeah, we are going to get into it. So like we've said already, it's Legend of Zelda's 35th anniversary. Man like Link is getting old. And yeah, man. So let's go straight into it. All right. So what is your first ever Legend of Zelda game?
Oh, so it actually started with Ocarina of Time. I've since gone back and played the old ones that I missed, but I started with Ocarina because back then when I was younger, I didn't own the consoles. My brother owned them. So he had the N64. He bought Ocarina of Time. So I used to sit and watch him play initially. And then obviously you have 3 save files on the cartridge. So I have my own one. And that is where I started. My first ever adventure was definitely Ocarina.
So Ocarina of Time is an incredible game. That game is just magnificent on so much levels. But before we even talk about Ocarina, we're going to go back a bit. All right. So Legend of Zelda, the initial one released in February 1986 on the NES. And then Legend of Zelda 2 released a year later, also on the NES, 1987. Randomly enough, it was a side-scrolling. Now, I'll be honest, I've never played the original 2 Legend of Zelda games. Have you played them?
So I've played them. I will say I haven't played them to completion. So this will be where people be like, "Hey, these guys call themselves a Zelda fan. You haven't played." I'm sorry, right? I've gone back and played them all because obviously, we'll probably get to the GameCube collections, but there was a collection version that had loads of old games. So I went back and played them. I liked kind of the sort of openness. In fact, it's interesting because when people talk about Breath of the Wild and how different that is to the kind of traditional Zelda formula, giving you kind of freedom to go wherever you want, there's sort of elements of the original Zelda in that because you can kind of play that game in, to a degree, any order. The side-scrolling one I didn't do much on. I couldn't quite gel with it. I've tried, I've sort of played through a few hours of it and stuff, but I definitely haven't finished that one. So unfortunately can't speak too authoritatively on the originals.
So it's funny that the original Legend of Zelda is probably the most open one until Breath of the Wild, which is the rebrand. And it's crazy to think that such an important aspect of that game was being able to just go and do what you want and in any order. And that's not what I initially thought a Zelda game was, because I missed that whole out. For me, Breath of the Wild is something brand new. And it's oh, this is so crazy that you can just do it in any order, because there's always been a certain structure to a Zelda game. You can choose which area you're going to go first. But other than that, there's always been a real kind of linear structure. So it's really crazy to think that from the beginning, Shigeru Miyamoto had it in his mind that you could just go anywhere. And you know what? Miyamoto lived in a different age, fam. Because he said he created this game because he used to wander around forests and caves as a kid. Could you, in big 2021, have you off in forests and caves?
No. Even now as a big man, I'm just hey, listen, right? This forest on my own, it looks kind of creepy, I'm not sure about this.
The world has changed, but I'm really glad he grew up in that time where he was able to bring his adventures. So we're not going to spend too much time on those two because neither of us have that much experience, but it's important to mention them because obviously they are the creation. Now, my first ever adventure in Legend of Zelda is A Link to the Past, which released in 1992 on the Super Nintendo. So have you played Link to the Past? I'm assuming
yes, but I have, but I played it on
GameCube.
Game Boy.
The Game Boy
Game Boy
SP.
Advance. Game Boy Advance. Yeah. That's it.
Yeah, cool. So the Legend of Zelda Link to the Past was my first one. Now the reason why I even got to play this game is I played Secret of Mana on the Super Famicom. I only played about 20 minutes because someone I knew had one, and we was all playing the game together. And then when I got a Super Nintendo, I really wanted that game, but you just couldn't find it anywhere in the UK. And then I heard the Legend of Zelda is similar, so I was like, never heard of the title. I'm just like, what is this? Let me check it out. And I remember the opening sequence and like being in the bed and Link's lying down and his uncle's in the room, and then you just kind of hear Zelda talking to him telepathically, and then he jumps out of bed and you're just like, oh my god, what's going on? My uncle's gone. And then you just jump straight into it. You got to find yourself into the castle, and then you break in and then you fall down. And I always remember that first sound of dropping into the castle and then the music and just seeing my uncle there just mash up. And I'm like, raw, what did you do to my uncle, fam? You just... And then I'm also thinking back, I'm like, my uncle was a waste man. How did he get mashed up so quickly? I was a little kid. He didn't even, I don't know what happened. He must have slipped and mash up. But anyway, you take his sword and you go down into the dungeon and you meet Zelda for the first time, and she's locked up. And within, I would say, 10 to 15 minutes, I was just caught up in that game. The lore, the world, like it just grabbed me instantly. What was your experience playing Link to the Past, going back like how much years later?
I think it's the same kind of thing. Like, it's definitely one of those, when you're in the world, right? Like the second it's like, and this kind of applies to almost every single Zelda game. They've done such a great job where, like, you know, whether it be Link to the Past, whether it be Breath of the Wild, whether it be Ocarina, you know, the second you step foot in that world, you're just like, you know, like as a kid, you always like, I want to go on an adventure. Like, you want to just go off and just do those. Like, it kind of just like is the perfect. And there's plenty of games that kind of let you go on adventures, but I feel like Zelda is the perfect embodiment of just like, I want to go on this adventure, because you kind of, because to a degree, like Link's almost just like your regular guy at first, like seemingly your regular guy. So you're just like, that could be me, man. So like I was yeah, but I mean, like definitely like 100%. Link to the Past at the beginning was just so. Like because you're on an interesting journey as well. You kind of get that early exposure to the castle, when it's obviously a place that ultimately you're going to end up at the very end. So that kind of structure of like, you know, let's show you where this is also going to begin and end.
Yeah, I love that, because it's quite a grand start. Like, because even first, just trying to find your way into the castle, I felt like it wasn't handholdy at all. And yeah, it's just a really a great way. We got to talk about the elephant in the room. Why the hell was Link's hair pink, fam?
That's a good point, you know.
It's the only Legend of Zelda game where his hair is some bright pink.
There's got to be a reason for that. There's got to be a reason.
It's got to be. But then I was thinking, so Link to the Past has this incredible thing where you go from the original world to the dark world. So when you first go to the dark world, you're a pink rabbit. So because basically when you go to the dark world, everything changes evil or changes into a monster. And I think if you're pure hearted, you turn into an animal. So he changes into this pink rabbit. So I was wondering if it was because of the pink rabbit, but then they still could have just made the rabbit yellow. It's weird.
It might have just been because, like, I don't know, maybe they did back then. They kind of went with the sort of, because the pink hair, in contrast with the green hat, is quite a striking combination. So maybe they just thought from like a sprite point of view, like, oh, this is quite an iconic character. But then obviously as they evolved him and kind of started to take that step, they realized that maybe pink hair doesn't necessarily. I'm not sure. There's got to be a reason for that. There's got to be a reason.
We need to find it out. So the music instantly, like, obviously we're gonna go crazy talking about the music, but it still blows my mind that such an incredible soundtrack was created back in from the original release in 1986, and how still today that soundtrack still sounds so modern. Like when I hear the main theme from Legend of Zelda, it doesn't sound old. Like there's certain games that like, for example, I'm a big Final Fantasy guy, and I feel like the Final Fantasy main theme has been modernized, and you can hear from back then where it sounded like some old trash to now where they modernized it and made it sound a lot more exciting. Where I feel like Legend of Zelda, from the first time you hear that theme, it just bangs, fam.
Yeah, no, 100%. That's what it's one of those like most memorable tunes that you can just like, you know, like some games you need to stop and think and be like, how does it go again? But this one you're just like, yeah, I got it.
And it's funny as well because like we both did it. As soon as we started thinking about the theme tune, it makes you smile. Like just something about that theme tune just brings out a giddiness in you and just really sinks to the adventure that you actually had.
Well, because it starts right on the title screen, right, on most of those games. Like before you're even in the game, you're literally on the title screen. You know, I know like it's jumping forward a bit, but it still reminds me of like Ocarina. You know, the title screen. You of course see like Link riding across on his horse, and you got the music playing. You're just like, I'm not even in the game yet, and I'm already ready.
It's funny because one of the things that I dislike about a lot of modern games is because it's all about atmosphere, you lost like that big theme tune going along on the game, because it's all about the atmosphere. Like I just finished Assassin's Creed Valhalla, and you literally don't get any music until like a battle's starting or you're going into a scene, and the rest of the time it's just that atmosphere. And like I almost missed that banging tune that just followed you throughout the game.
Yeah. I think it's one of those sort of things. It's kind of like, because there are so many games. I mean, again, they're different sort of styles. There's so many games these days that sort of strive for the kind of realism. So they're sort of thinking, all right, the music here has got to like amp up, as you say, like the atmosphere instead. Whereas like back in the day, it's just like, it doesn't matter if it makes sense. We're just gonna bang a tune behind, and you're gonna walk around to a tune like that's sick. I know that when I wanna like set foot in the volcano, I've got this sick tune that's playing. And then when I move to Zora's Domain, I'm just like, I'm not gonna sit there and think, oh, yo, where's this music coming from? I'm just like, yo, I'm here. Like that's some of the coolest stuff.
So let's rip off the band-aid and talk about the incredible Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. Now, this was released on the Nintendo 64 back in 1998. Now, if you had to sum up this game, don't worry, I'm not going to ask you, we're not going to just talk about one sentence, but if you just had to sum up this game in one sentence, what it means to you, what does Ocarina of Time mean to you?
Oh, mate, that's I feel like, because I've been playing games since I was like, well, 2. I mean, not actually very well, but like, you know, my brother used to have the Sega Master System. I'd just sit there like with the pad and just do that. So I've been playing games since like Alex Kidd in Miracle World, right? But I feel like Ocarina of Time, between Ocarina of Time and Super Mario 64, one of those games was sort of the definitive moment where like beforehand I was just playing games, so I was like, this is kind of cool, but it didn't really mean much. But that was the point in my mind where I'm like, I love video games. Like this is me, and I feel like that was definitely like Ocarina, because it just had, because it's got so many things that I like in you know, in games like nowadays, and it translates into sort of the things that I enjoy now. You know, I enjoy collecting loot and gear, and although it wasn't a looter, you had like items to collect. You know, it's got the sense of adventure. It's got what I always liked as well, is I liked it when kind of games had you know, action elements, but then also puzzle elements, because I've always quite enjoyed like solving puzzles, and I'm just like, so many games like you go through and you just hack your way to the end of the game. Whereas like Zelda would be like, you have this change of pace. You'd be like, oh, going from, you know, solving puzzles to suddenly in a fighting room to like going back and doing this. So it kind of just, to sort of summarize it in like a sentence, it basically like embodies like everything that I like about gaming, like in one.
Fam, if we're going to talk about solving puzzles, we have to talk about the incredible sound every time you solve a puzzle. That is just, there's nothing, I don't think another game's made me feel that way. The two things, that chime when you solve the puzzle and when you're opening a chest and you get that that just bangs. All right, cool. So Ocarina of Time has got some incredible moments. So we're going to just throw out some moments that really mean a lot to us within that game. So one moment that lives with me forever as a gamer, and obviously we're going to go into spoiler territory for Ocarina of Time now. If you ain't played it, it's been a while, but if you decide you're going to go back, then you can skip this bit. I'll put a number below when we're going on to the next section of the game. But one of the moments that just stick with me more than anything, there's two, but I think you're gonna say the other one, so I'm not gonna say that one, is when you first rescue Epona. So like you go to one branch and you meet Epona, and my man's a waste man and he's trying to move weird to you, and then you win the race. And I keep it a buck, I didn't win the race the first time. It took me a couple times as a kid to
that race used to be kind of hard.
Yeah, that race was hard. Like your carrots would run out. You're like stamina. Yeah. And then you finally win the race, and then he locks the cage and he laughs at you like, you ain't going anywhere. And you're like, raw, they're doing me like this. And you're just riding around, and there's nothing to prompt you to jump over, and you're just riding around, and then you start speeding up and he just jumps over the wall, and I was like, oh my gosh. And then you just out and you have him for the rest of the game.
That was a sick moment.
A moment that just still lives with me. Tell me a moment about Ocarina of Time that really lives with you.
Mate, there's so many, but I've got to throw it to like the battle with like Dark Link in the water temple, because like when you walk in that room, right, because obviously like, you know, if you, because up until that point, obviously if you're playing through the game, you would have done the forest temple by that time. You of course would have done the earlier dungeons, so you'll kind of be used to the format of like, all right, I'm walking into this room, this is probably a boss room. But it was kind of early in the dungeon, to be fair, so you're like, is this a boss room? And it just looks kind of empty at first. You just see this little island in the middle, so you're wandering over, you're like, all right, let me see what's going on. Then there's figures there and you're just like, okay, and it literally is like the mirror image of you, but it is such a cool fight, because the way that, like, you know, the way that he is literally matching every single one of your attacks. So, you know, I mean, obviously if you want to cheese it, you can whip out the big Goron sword or whip out like the hammer and just like whack him, because he can't mirror that. But generally speaking, it's such a cool fight. It's like that's the sort of thing that would happen like a flipping Naruto anime with, like, you know, like a flipping shadow clone battle and stuff. But it was so like that is definitely one of my favorite fights. It's not even like it's a sub boss fight, but
it's crazy as well, because I think that's the first time for me as Zelda felt dark, because we've never really, because even the Dark World in Link to the Past didn't really feel dark. It still felt like cartoony, but when you was fighting that Shadow Link, it actually really felt dark. Like it was the first time that game kind of really made me feel on edge.
Oh mate, I felt on edge before that. Let me tell you, right? Like bear in mind when I first played Ocarina of Time, like I was a kid, right? So like I had to, and the thing that I hated the most, right? There's three moments I hated. It was the forest temple when you're an adult, because the shadow hands, right? They used to scare the hell out of me. I'd be like, right, if I just run through this room, I won't even have to deal with it. I know you can kill them, but at the time I was like, this got me shook. Right. The second one was obviously when you go back in time and you are Adult Link and you go to Hyrule Town Center and there's just all the re-dead just there.
Oh yeah, they're crazy. Yeah, they are crazy.
That's where every time without fail, I would play the song to freeze them, because I'm like, I don't even want to walk past them unless they're frozen. And
it's then the sound they make as well, isn't it?
And then when they jump on you, they're like, I was like, oh man, leave me alone. But the worst one was like flipping the actual Shadow Temple. The first time when I was a kid, I had to get my brother to play through it, because I was like, this is a temple full of the stuff that I hate. So my brother had to literally play it for me just to get through that temple, because I was like, I can't do it.
That's crazy. Do you know one thing as well, that what I thought you was going to say, and another iconic moment that is so important, was when Link pulled the Master Sword. Because this was before... this was before spoilers. This was like you experiencing this is the first time, and the only time you'd ever be able to get any information from it is if you're talking to like a friend or a family member. So like I remember going to get a Master Sword, and to be honest with you, I thought it was like near the end of the game and the game was ending, and then when you pulled it out and then all of the blue comes and then you reveal yourself as an adult Link, mind blown, because I just never knew that. Nintendo were really smart, like in like all of the artwork and everything they had. They only showed young Link, where now like game companies show you everything. Game companies show you certain spoilers that are like the biggest spoilers in a game, and you're like, what are you doing? Like, how did that feel for you when you actually realized that there was an adult Link in the game?
Yeah, no, that was such a cool moment because that was, that's part of the reason that I love that game so much because there's the time traveling nature and the fact that it's not just like, oh, I'm adult Link, I'm never going to go back now. There's obviously also the reason to revisit at different times as well. So that's just like a whole new chunk of the game, and I was, that was sick. And then of course when you're adult Link, it then opens up like a whole lot of possibilities because from that point onwards, the items you start getting, you're getting like different tunics and you're getting different shields, and then that starts playing into the customization aspect, which was just, whoo.
So let's talk a bit about Ganondorf because I feel like Ganon's in Ocarina of Time is one of his greatest character moments because I feel like he was always there, like luring. Like Breath of the Wild is incredible and I love it, but one of the things is like the only real thing about Ganon is that spiral thing. I don't feel like he's part of my actual story. Where in Ocarina of Time, I just felt like he was always like when he has that moment when he sees you and his horse jumps up and he just slapping you to the side like an idiot. Like he's treating you like you're nobody from get-go.
Yeah, definitely. Well, he's there even earlier, right? Because you remember when you first sneak into the castle and you see Zelda, and you look at the window and he's there, like he's there at like key moments throughout your story, and you're just like, damn, man, this guy. And like, obviously, then when you finally, you get to like adult Link and you start going to like Gerudo Valley, and they're like, oh yeah, he was here as well. You're like, oh man, this guy's everywhere.
One thing as well that I really like, a lot of people never really speak about it as well, is one of the things that a lot of criticisms that Legend of Zelda games get is Zelda is just always getting kidnapped like she's Princess Peach and she's never really doing anything. Well, that's not true of Ocarina of Time because she was Sheik and she basically guided Link the whole time that he was adult Link, and she had moves and she was doing bits. So she was never really the damsel in distress. She was a major impact of that story. And I feel like people always kind of underplay that.
And let's also not forget, right? Even on the times where she does, even in that one, she's badass because she's Sheik, right? But like in other games as well, she's still like immensely powerful. It's not like, when you rescue Princess Peach, she's like, I'll make you a cake. When you rescue Zelda, she's like, let me go steal Ganondorf. You're like, all right, hold tight. So like, she is like one of the flipping Triforce holders. Like she might get kidnapped. Like, all right, cool. We need a reason to save someone, but she's sick.
All right, we can't talk about Ocarina of Time without talking about Navi. Now, people hated Navi with a passion. Now, looking back, I can see why Navi is so annoying, but I didn't really feel like Navi didn't annoy me like Fi did in Skyward Sword.
Yeah.
How did you find Navi?
Like honestly, in Ocarina, like she never really bothered me too much. Like so, when I was at university, like I had that as my text ringtone on my phone. Like so, I was cool. Like I was cool with it in Ocarina. Like Fi was annoying, and also to a degree when you went to Majora's Mask, I forgot who it was, but you had the other one. Like, that would pester you all the time because sometimes you'd be off trying to do things, and they'd be like, "Yo, do you want to go and do this?" Like, no, leave me alone. So like, but Navi was alright.
Let me just live. Now we can't talk about Majora's Mask without we can't talk about Ocarina of Time without talking about Majora's Mask, which was the sequel to it. And this was the first time, and we won't spend too long on Majora's Mask, but this was the first time they really hummed into a dark side of Legend of Zelda. Now, it's weird because when I think back about Majora's Mask, I really enjoyed my time with it. But at the time, I don't think I was ready for that. I don't think I was ready for that kind of Legend of Zelda game. So like, I love the moments where like the mask transformations and you put the mask on, you're like, like that was cool. But yeah, the whole 3-day cycle and stuff, like I found it. I think I found it a lot more difficult and a lot more darker. It's probably Majora's Mask is probably one of the only Zelda games that I've played that I haven't completed. What was your time with Majora's Mask?
Yeah, I was a similar place to you because I obviously followed Ocarina again back when it was like my brother owned the N64. He played that. He borrowed Ocarina from like a friend. And like back then, obviously, I'm playing it as like a kid. So a similar kind of thing. Like at the time, I enjoyed it because I was like, well, this looks like Ocarina. It's much more of what I like. But then obviously the whole kind of cycle thing back then, I didn't appreciate it too much. I don't think I had the mental capacity as a kid to work out like, I've got to do this stuff in 3 days, like all that kind of. So when I was younger, I didn't finish it. It was actually the time that I actually completed it was when the DS came out and they re-released the Majora's Mask on DS, and that was when I went through and I actually finished it, because then I was able to like appreciate the whole thing. So I love the game, because again, you know, like in all these games, it goes back to one of the reasons that I love the series and I love kind of like gaming in general is I like collecting stuff. So the idea of kind of going around, you know, you don't have to get all the masks, but you've got all these little side stories with all these different people. And like one of the coolest things about Majora is it's like suddenly you might discover a new side story, but you're like, oh, I'm 2 days deep already. Like I can't even begin to hope to help this person in a day. So you know, you're like, all right, I've got to go back and do that later. And then like some of them were like super tight. Like when you want to try and get the upgrade for that sword, like you had to like bang through the second dungeon to get out, so you could do all the Goron racing and stuff. Like, yeah, there were so many cool elements to that. So I liked it. I still prefer Ocarina. I know. Like for anyone that a lot of the time, like you know, they have their typically if it's between Ocarina and Majora's, there's always that interesting divide. But yeah, it's a fantastic game, but it's definitely quite different. The 3-day cycle is not for everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And I think the DS version improved in certain aspects from the original that the original had, just to make it a little bit more kind of easier and clear cut for people. Yeah. All right. We love this series. But neither of us are going to sit here and act like it's been a perfect series. All right. There's been dips in the series that we both know, just being honest. So what is your least favorite game in the Legend of Zelda series?
It has to be Spirit Tracks, right? Spirit Tracks, you know, but you know what, right? Here's the thing. Like, I know, like for me, for the most part, there haven't really been any Zelda games that I've disliked. I've just liked pretty much every single one. And if it wasn't for one very specific thing, I also would have loved Spirit Tracks, because I loved Phantom Hourglass. And I know that Phantom Hourglass, a lot of people really found quite annoying, because it had this weird repetitive cycle where every time you did something, you had to go back to the main dungeon and kind of loop through there. And it was quite repetitive. But what I loved about Phantom Hourglass was, like, again, the collection side of things. You could collect all the parts of your ship, and you had like loads of different ships, and like you got some like flipping anime-looking parts of the ship that's got a drill on the front. It was sick. But then Spirit Tracks did a similar thing. You're like, all right, I'm on a train. It was cool. But they introduced one thing that killed the game for me, which was obviously a lot of Zelda games got their instruments, right? And then in this one, you had the little flute. But the thing is, it would have been fine if I could have played it with buttons, and I would have loved the game. But you had to blow into the microphone on the DS, right? And it's fine if you can just like consistently just like blow into the microphone. But when you have to start doing pause notes and like break the notes and move around, right? I got to the point where I was trying to fight the final boss and I kept on losing, not because I was not able to do the combat, but every time I had to pause and play the thing, it wouldn't recognize the notes, and it would be like, you've messed up this tune. Then I get hit by the boss and I'm just like, I literally have not, I'm not incapable. I just can't play this song because this stupid microphone will not let me like play this tune. So for that simple reason, like, I kid you not, I was at university. I was living in a house with 2.6 at the time, and it's the only time he ever saw me get like angry with a Zelda game. I took the cartridge out, I dashed it against the wall, and I was like, no, I'm done.
It's funny as well, because I found it like, so I never played that much of the Zelda handheld games, because I didn't like the whole using the
moving.
Yeah, the stylus thing to move. I found that really, really weird, and it just felt completely un-Zelda for me. And like me playing them, like I played Link to the Past again on my Game Boy, and that's what I wanted to feel about. Two of the games that I really would love to play, and I'm gonna definitely go back and check them out, is Minish Cap and Link Between Worlds, because they're like, I love the art style of Minish Cap, and Link Between Worlds looks super cool. But what I got to play, which I missed out on the original, was Link's Awakening. So I got to play Link's Awakening for the first time when they did the re-release with like the brand new art style. And that's such an interesting game. It's another Zelda game that really takes you to a whole different world. You got Mario characters and stuff in it. It's proper mad.
I love it, man. It is such a fantastic game, and it's funny actually because I played Link's Awakening back when it came out, right? Obviously, or not when it came out, but I played it the older version. Enjoyed that one, loved it. It's actually like that's one of my like in my sort of like top ranking Zelda games. Link's Awakening is up there, as is Minish Cap. So 100% you need to play that. I'm actually hoping that they do a Minish Cap remake in the style of the new Link's Awakening, because it would fit the theme so well.
That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, but the thing with Link's Awakening, it made me realize, like, now going back to it, is sort of, and this is kind of just like gaming in general, but even Zelda games, like, there's no hand holding in the old Zelda games. Like, you go back and play the old ones, like Link to the Past, Link's Awakening, like all the top-down ones, they're just like, here's the map, go. Like,
yeah, that
you don't know where to go.
It's a difficult game. It's not easy at all. It's literally not easy.
There are some parts where I'm just trying to because I hadn't played for such a long time. There's some parts where I'm trying to get through like a dungeon. I'm missing a key and I just can't I'm looking at the map and I'm like, I can't for the life of me see where I'm missing this key from. But like in the more modern Zelda games, there'd be like some slight kind of obvious hint where it's like, oh, here's where, here's kind of where you should go. Or now you might be like, oh, have you thought of this? Whereas like, yeah, you go back then, it's just like, nope, go solve it yourself.
And that is the end of part 1. But do you know what? We can talk about Zelda forever. So make sure you check out part 2 over there. And we're going to nerd out even more. Come on, Breath of the Wild, Wind Waker, Twilight Princess, and you'll get to find out what's the best Legend of Zelda game ever. We out.